Your Nan never owned a recipe book. She didn't need one. Every ratio lived in her hands, every texture in her fingertips. She knew a dough was ready not by a timer, but by the way it felt when she pressed her thumb into it. We replaced that knowledge with apps, scales, and tutorials, and somehow they still don't taste the same. Number 9 was the most reprinted recipe of the entire war, and number 7 produced confectionery, indistinguishable from boxed sweets at 10 times the price, using nothing but icing sugar and a thimble. 15 bakes. No recipes, just the knowledge your Nan carried in her hands. Let's bring it back. Number 15, bread and butter pudding. This exists because waste used to be unacceptable. Not inconvenient, not a bit inefficient. Unacceptable. A moral failure. Something that would have made your Nan's mother turn around in the kitchen and look at you until you understood. Stale bread wasn't a problem. It was tomorrow's pudding. Buttered on both sides, properly, not thinly. Layered in a greased dish with currants between each layer. Custard poured over. Milk, eggs, sugar, nutmeg, left to soak. Then the oven. 35 minutes, that was Sunday's pudding, made from bread that was going in the bin. Now you throw it away and buy a chilled dessert for £2.50. Modified starch, powdered custard, a picture of a farmhouse on the front. You paid for the bread once, you threw it away, you paid for the replacement. That is not progress. That is the same transaction twice, with the second one going to someone else. Number 14, jam roly-poly, a cloth. That is what was lost. Not a skill, not a secret. A cloth, sweat pastry, jam spread thick, rolled up, wrapped in a flowered cloth, tied at both ends, 2 hours in boiling water. The cloth created the environment. Everything else followed from that. You now steam things in microwaves and call it the same. It isn't. The original is cheaper and better and slower and was abandoned for one reason. It didn't come in packaging. Not because it stopped working. It never stopped working. The cloth is in the kitchen drawer. It has always been in the kitchen drawer. You just stopped using it. Number 13, rice pudding, milk, rice, oven, 2 hours. You replace that with a tin. The tin tastes like the tin. The oven version tastes like milk that has been slowly turned into something else, thicker, sweeter, denser, with a skin on the surface that people used to get up early on Sunday mornings specifically to claim before anyone else did. You were told 2 hours was too long, that the tin was just as good, that the difference wasn't worth it. None of that was true. It was never true. It was a product looking for a reason to exist. A bag of short-grain pudding rice in 1955 cost sixpence and lasted 3 weeks of Sunday rice puddings. The oven was already on for the weekly bake. The rice went in when the baking came out. It cost nothing extra because it asked nothing extra. The tin costs £1. The tin tastes like the tin. Number 12, bread pudding. Not the same as bread and butter pudding, not even close. Stale bread soaked in cold tea, squeezed dry with both hands until the bread collapsed into a dense, dark mass. Worked together with shredded sweet, brown sugar, mixed dried fruit, mixed spice, a beaten egg, pressed into a greased tin. Baked low and slow for an hour and a half until the top cracked and darkened. Heavy in the hand, darker than it looked, richly spiced, better on the third day than the first. You are not short of bread. You throw away 24 million slices of it every single day in this country. Every one of them is this pudding. The ingredients are there. The oven is there. What is missing is the decision to use what you already have instead of buying what you don't need. Your Nan called it bread pudding. She made it from waste. She never apologized for it. There was nothing to apologize for. Pattern break after number 12. Stop. Look at what just happened in 4 items. Stale bread, cold tea, eggs, milk, suet, sugar, currants. That is the full list of ingredients across all 4 puddings. Everything else was knowledge, the order, the temperature, the timing, the feel of the dough in the hands, the sound of the oven, the smell of the kitchen when the top had cracked and the thing was done. Your Nan did not have a well-stocked pantry. She had 6 staples and the understanding of what they were capable of. That understanding did not come from a book. It came from repetition, from making the same things week after week, until the hands knew without the head having to think about it, until the correct amount of flour was whatever filled her cupped palm, until the oven was hot enough when a scrap of paper browned in 30 seconds, until bread pudding was done when the top cracked and pulled away slightly from the edges of the tin. That is not instinct. That is 10,000 hours of practice disguised as habit. That understanding is what was replaced. Not with something better, with something more profitable, with products designed to make you feel that the knowledge was too complicated to carry yourself, that it was safer and easier and more sensible to let the brand carry it for you, in a packet, at a price, on a shelf with a picture of a farmhouse on the front, and a list of ingredients on the back that includes things you cannot pronounce and would not voluntarily add to food if you were making it yourself. The brands did very well out of that arrangement. You got powdered custard. The next 11 items on this list will show you specifically what was possible with 6 ingredients and the knowledge of what to do with them. Pay attention. This is not history, this is instruction. Number 11. Drop scones, 10 minutes. That is all this requires. Flour, egg, buttermilk, bicarbonate of soda, beaten together in a jug until smooth, griddle on the range, no fat, until water hissed across the surface, batter down by the spoonful. Watch for the bubbles to break and hold their shape on the surface. Turn, 2 minutes each side, done. The Women's Institute Handbook from 1949 listed drop scones as a tea-time treat for 4 at a total cost of under 3p. No oven, no yeast, no waiting, no equipment that wasn't already in the house. You now pay £3 for Scotch pancakes in a brunch cafe while you wait 20 minutes for a table. Your nan made them in under 10 minutes on a Tuesday from what was already in the cupboard. The only thing standing between you and drop scones is the decision to make. That's it. That's the entire obstacle. Number 10. Baked custard. You have been told that making proper custard is difficult, that it curdles, that it splits, that it requires more skill than you have. You were lied to. Here is the truth. 3 eggs beaten with sugar in a bowl. Warm milk poured in slowly while stirring. Nutmeg grated across the surface. The dish set in a tin, half filled with water. 40 minutes in a moderate oven. The water bath is the one thing to know. It surrounds the custard with even, gentle heat. Without it, the edges overcook while the center stays liquid. With it, the whole thing sets smooth and clean and pale gold from edge to center. That is the secret, a tin of water. That is what you were told required specialist knowledge. Professional restaurants call this technique a bain-marie and charge £8 a portion. Your nan called it putting the dish in a tin of water and charged no one anything. The knowledge was always yours. Someone decided you didn't need it. Number 9. Jam tarts. Leftover pastry pressed into a patty tin. Teaspoon of jam in each hollow, 12 minutes in the oven. The Ministry of Food printed this recipe on ration leaflets and distributed it to millions of households between 1940 and 1954. It was their most reprinted recipe, not because it was sophisticated, because it used almost nothing and produced something worth eating. Children across Britain learned to crimp pastry edges before they could spell their own names. Each child's crimping slightly different, slightly their own. The slight caramelization at the edge where the jam had bubbled over the pastry and caught on the tin. You now buy jam tarts in cellophane from a baker who has never met you. The pastry is uniform, the jam is measured to the millimeter, nobody crimped the edges, nobody's hands touched them. They taste of nothing in particular and cost £2 for 12. Your nan gave a child leftover pastry and a spoonful of jam and produced in 12 minutes something that taught them their hands were capable of making something real. That is what was replaced. Number 8. Treacle tart, golden syrup, fine breadcrumbs from stale bread, half a lemon, short crust pastry. That is the entire list. The breadcrumbs absorb the syrup during baking and give the filling structure. Without them, it stays liquid. With them, it sets to a soft, yielding, intensely sweet mass with a slightly chewy center. Every modern recipe that suggests removing the breadcrumbs for a cleaner result produces an inferior tart. The breadcrumbs are not the economy measure. They are the correct ingredient, always eaten warm with custard. The sweetness of the treacle needs the flat dairy note alongside it. That is not suggestion, that is how the dish works. Treacle tart appeared on school dinner tables across Britain for 40 years. Cheap enough for an institution, filling enough to count as a meal, built from the breadcrumbs that would otherwise have been wasted. 3 problems, 1 solution, no fuss. She would have recognized the logic. It was the same logic applied to everything that came out of her kitchen. Number 7. Coconut ice set in the pantry. No heat, no oven, no technique. Condensed milk, icing sugar, desiccated coconut mixed together until stiff and slightly sticky, half pressed into a tin lined with grease-proof paper. The other half dyed with a single drop of cochineal, a specific pale pink, not red, not deep rose, the right color and no other, and pressed on top. Into the pantry overnight. By morning, firm enough to cut cleanly. 2 layers, white and pink, sitting perfectly alongside each other. Each piece wrapped in a strip of grease-proof paper. They look like a confectioner's window. They cost 1 shilling for 40 pieces. The Good Housekeeping Institute listed coconut ice as the most popular homemade sweet at church fetes and school fundraisers across England and Wales in 1952. You now buy coconut bars at £2 each, marketed as raw and organic and plant-based and artisanal. The ingredients are identical. The process is identical. The price is 40 times higher. The only thing that changed was who made it and who took the margin. Mid-video spike before number 6. Here is what you were not told. The reason these desserts tasted the way they did was not the ingredients. It was not even the method. It was the fact that someone specific made them in a specific kitchen for specific people on a specific afternoon. You cannot replicate that. You cannot source it. You cannot have it delivered. You cannot subscribe to it. There is no product version. There is no equivalent. What those kitchens produced was not food. It was time. Shared, specific, unrepeatable time. A Sunday, a table, flour on the surface, a person who had made this 100 times before and knew exactly what they were doing, and a child standing close enough to watch, and eventually close enough to try. That is how the knowledge moved. Not through books, not through recipes, through proximity, through repetition, through one pair of hands showing another pair of hands, without explanation, just the doing of it, until the second pair of hands started knowing what the first pair already knew. We are the first generation in the history of this country that mostly did not receive that, not because the knowledge stopped being available. Our grandmothers still knew, most of them knew until the day they died. Your nan knew, her nan knew. The chain did not break because the knowledge disappeared. It broke because we stopped being in the room, because the kitchen stopped being the center of the house and became a room you passed through on the way to somewhere with a screen, because Sunday afternoon became something you filled with other things. Easier things, quieter things, things that didn't require you to stand at a counter for 2 hours getting flour on your hands and learning something from someone who had already spent 30 years learning it. Because the brands were ready. They had been ready for years, waiting with a product that let you feel like you hadn't missed anything, like the chilled pudding in the plastic tray was the same thing, like the tin of rice pudding was an acceptable substitute, like the packet mix was a reasonable trade for knowledge that took decades to build and now came conveniently pre-measured in a paper sachet. It wasn't an acceptable trade. It was not a trade at all. It was a replacement, a substitution that moved the knowledge out of your hands and into a factory and charged you for the privilege of having it returned to you in a form you could no longer understand or reproduce or pass on. The knowledge your nan carried in her hands took a lifetime to build, a lifetime of Sunday afternoons, of watching and trying and failing and trying again until the hands knew without the head having to think about it. You were sold a packet mix in exchange for that. The next time someone tells you that convenience is progress, ask them what was given up to make it convenient. And who is holding it now? Number 6. Eve's pudding. Sharp stewed apple on the bottom of a greased pie dish. Plain Victoria sponge mixture on top. 30 minutes. The apple juice soaked up into the sponge base during baking. The bottom layer soft and yielding. The top light and golden. Turned out onto a plate, the apples spilling from beneath in warm, syrupy pools. The fruit changed with what the garden or the market provided. Bramleys in autumn, gooseberries in summer, rhubarb forced from under a bucket in the yard through winter. The sponge was always the same. This was a method, not a recipe. The same method applied each week to whatever was cheapest and most in need of using. She did not need a name for the principle. She had fruit. She knew what to do with it. Number 5. Spotted Dick. Sweat pudding studded with currants, steamed in a cloth for 2 hours. Dense, yielding, golden, where it had touched the cloth. Bird's custard poured hot over the top directly from the tin. Sweat does not render out of the pudding during steaming the way butter does. It stays in the structure, keeping every layer moist through 2 hours of steam. A butter pudding steamed for 2 hours comes out dry. A sweat pudding comes out perfectly. She knew this, not from reading about it, from the result. Identical, reliable, every time. You now buy sweat pudding in a tin that takes 2 minutes in the microwave. It produces a hot, sweet, dense substance in the shape of a pudding. The texture is not the same. The flavor is not the same. The margin is yours. Number 4. Queen of puddings. 3 textures in a single dish. This is not a description. It is the point. Fine white breadcrumbs stirred into warm milk with butter and lemon zest until swelled into a soft, thick layer. 2 egg yolks beaten in, baked until just set. Raspberry jam spread warm over the top. 2 egg whites whipped to stiff peaks with sugar, piled on, returned to the oven until the meringue turned pale gold and crisp on the outside while staying soft and yielding beneath. Soft, milky base, sharp jam between the layers, crisp, dissolving meringue on top. This dish appears in British recipe collections as far back as the 17th century. It was aristocratic food once. By the post-war period, it had become everyday. The technique had not changed. The address had. You were told that meringue was difficult, that it weeps, collapses, fails without a stand mixer and specific atmospheric conditions. 2 egg whites in a clean bowl, beaten by hand for 10 minutes. That was her equipment. It worked every time. She was not exceptional, she simply knew how. Number 3, ginger parkin, black treacle, golden syrup, oatmeal, plain flour, lard, ground ginger, bicarbonate of soda, stirred together into a thick dark batter that smelled of something ancient and warming, poured into a flat tin. Baked until just set, then wrapped in grease-proof paper and left alone, completely alone, for 3 days. This is the instruction. This is the one piece of knowledge that no product manufacturer can replicate, package, and sell back to you. You cannot buy 3 days of patience. You cannot pre-order the result. You cannot fast-track it. Over those 3 days, the treacle worked through the oat crumb, the texture deepened, the surface turned sticky and dark, the ginger settled through every layer. The whole thing became something fundamentally different and better than it had been when it came out of the oven. Food scientists studying oat beta-glucan fiber confirmed decades later what post-war bakers across Yorkshire and Lancashire had understood by feel for generations. The beta-glucan in oats holds moisture at a molecular level that plain flour cannot match. The parkin these women made was structurally superior to any flour-only gingerbread. They were not improvising. They were not making do. They were right. The laboratories took 50 years to catch up. The people who waited 3 days got the better cake. They always did. Modern food cannot sell you that. Every product is optimized for immediate results because immediate results mean immediate sales. Parkin asked you to trust the process without seeing it, without checking it, without opening the paper to verify that something was happening. That kind of trust is not compatible with a product model. So Parkin was quietly left behind, and ginger cake in a plastic wrapper was placed in front of it, and most people stopped noticing the difference because they had forgotten what they were supposed to be comparing it to. Number 2. Steamed syrup sponge. Equal weights of butter, sugar, self-raising flour, and eggs beaten together until pale. A ladle of golden syrup poured into the bottom of a greased pudding basin, sponge mixture on top. Grease-proof paper pressed over the surface. Foil pleated across the top, tied with string. Into a pan of boiling water, water halfway up the basin. Lid on, 90 minutes, on a low simmer. Topped up with boiling water from the kettle when the level dropped. When it turned out onto the plate, the syrup ran down the sides in golden rivulets. The sponge was light and yielding, having steamed rather than baked. The bottom deep amber and slightly sticky. You know that smell? If you grew up in this country before 1980, you know it. Warm golden syrup and hot butter on a cold afternoon. It is stored in memory, not as a taste, but as a moment. A kitchen, a particular afternoon, a particular person. The tinned version takes 2 minutes in a microwave. It is warm and sweet. That is where the similarity ends. The moment is not in the tin. It was never in the tin. It was in the 90 minutes of a pot simmering on the stove, and the smell that moved through the house while it did. And the person who was making it, and the fact that you knew the whole time that something was happening in the kitchen that was being made specifically for you. You cannot buy that, you can only make it. Number 1, plain Victoria sponge with jam, 4 ingredients, equal weight, margarine, caster sugar, self-raising flour, eggs. She did not measure them. She cracked the eggs into one hand, hefted the margarine in the other, and matched everything by feel. She creamed the margarine and sugar with a wooden spoon until pale, until her arm ached and the mixture had turned from yellow and grainy to pale and smooth and smelling of something sweet. She beat the eggs in one at a time. She folded the flour through with a figure of 8 motion, learned from her own mother and never thought to explain because it required no explanation, just the motion. Just the feel of the air being kept in the batter while the flour went through. 2 greased tins, a moderate oven, 15 minutes. She knew they were done by the way the tops sprang back under her fingertip. Raspberry jam between the layers, always raspberry. A dusting of caster sugar on top. No buttercream, no fondant, no decoration, no nonsense. The National Food Survey of 1957 recorded Victoria sponge as the single most commonly baked cake in British homes, appearing in over 60% of households that reported any home baking at all. Not because it was fashionable, not because it was sophisticated, because it was reliable. Every ingredient available every week on every budget, a child could help make it. It came out right every time if you followed the method. Experienced bakers knew the margarine version was lighter long before food scientists confirmed it. The lower melting point produces a more even crumb, a lighter texture, a better result. The cake made in a kitchen in Wolverhampton or Wakefield was structurally better than most of what gets sold in patisseries today for £4 a slice, by women who never once used the word structurally, who would have found it faintly ridiculous to apply that kind of language to something as simple and obvious and correct as a sponge cake made on a Sunday afternoon with 4 ingredients and a wooden spoon. This was the cake that said the family is here, the Sunday is ours, we made this ourselves. That is not nostalgia. That is what a kitchen is for. Nobody makes it anymore because somewhere along the way we started believing that plain meant ordinary, that simple meant lesser, that the cake in the patisserie window with the fondant and the tiered layers and the name in gold on the box was better because it was more expensive and more complicated and more impressive. It wasn't better. It was more expensive and more complicated and more impressive. Those are 3 different things from better, and we confused them. And the industry that makes money from that confusion was in no hurry to correct us. Plain never meant ordinary. It meant sufficient and reliable and ours. It meant that a kitchen in Wolverhampton and a kitchen in Wakefield and a kitchen in Whitehaven We're all making the same cake on the same Sunday afternoon. Not because someone had standardized the recipe, but because the knowledge had spread from one pair of hands to another across decades of kitchen tables, and the result was always the same. Always right, always the correct weight in the hand, and the correct smell from the oven, and the correct spring under the fingertip. That is not nostalgia. That is craft. Practiced by women who were never once told that what they were doing was skilled, who were never offered a certificate for it, who were never congratulated for it by anyone with a platform or a program or a book deal. It was just what you did on a Sunday, before tea. And the fact that it is gone is not an accident, and it is not inevitable, and it is not progress. It is a choice that was made gradually by an industry that needed you to stop knowing things, and a culture that was too distracted to notice what was being taken. 15 puddings, all of them made in a kitchen smaller than most modern bathrooms, all of them made from ingredients that cost almost nothing, all of them better than anything currently sitting in the supermarket chilled aisle, not because of where they came from, but because of who made them and how and what they understood about what they were doing. Try one this week: the drop scones, 10 minutes from jug to plate, or the rice pudding, 2 hours in an oven that was already on for something else, or the Victoria sponge, made by feel, with margarine, with raspberry jam, with a dusting of caster sugar and nothing else. These were not special occasion desserts, they were the end of Sunday. The thing that said the day was complete, the washing up was done, and the week could begin. We gave that up for a Mr. Kipling box. Somewhere right now there is a kitchen in Britain that hasn't smelled of anything baking in years. The oven works. The flour is in the cupboard, the jam is on the shelf, the eggs are on the counter, nothing is missing except the person who knew what to do with all of it, and the Sunday afternoon they would have given you to learn. That is the loss. Not the recipes, not the methods, not the ingredients. The afternoon, tell me in the comments which one your nan made, tell me which one you're making this week, because it is not too late to bring it back, not to the shops, to the kitchen, where it always belonged.